Located in modern-day Jordan, the city of Petra is one of the most famous architectural sites of the Middle East. Petra was built in 312 as a religious center by nomadic Arab peoples called Nabateans. Located between Israel, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia during Hellenistic times, Petra was a center for trade. Because the terrain of that area is mountainous, with various valleys and gorges, the city was built as a relief out of the mountainside. The rock itself was sandstone, which usually erodes away when it rains. However, this city has remained with little erosion for thousands of years. Once it had been carved out, the stone had left incredible patterns on the floor and ceiling due to the layers of sand. Most of the rooms in the main palace were for religious purposes, and closer to the ground there was a series of tombs. On the flatland outside of the mountain, there were marketplaces and pools. It is referred to as the Lost City because it was empty for thousands of years after its peak. Because this was during the Hellenistic period, many civilizations were at an architectural peak. Alexander the Great had come from Greece to create intellectual centers along the Mediterranean and had spread influence across the Middle East. It is unknown if Alexander ever made it to Petra, but because the city was a center for trade, traveling merchants came to share stories of other Hellenistic cities. At its peak, Petra would have had about 2,000 residents, along with domesticated pack animals for travel, such as camels. According to National Geographic, Petra was said to be built because of the citizens' devoutness to their sun god. The architecture was strategically placed and built as to observe eclipses and for the sun to act as a spotlight on their sacred rooms. Extravagant tombs were built for the upper-class patrons or priests. The workers that built the tombs and tunnels within were not formally schooled, but it is no question they were skilled. Through laser screening in 2014, it was found that steps were carved into the mountain, meaning nobody had to hang off the ledge of a cliff with a rope. But what one sees on the outside of the mountain is not all there is to the city. Within the mountain, there is an extensive network of tunnels leading to different rooms or tombs. Because this city was located in the middle of the desert, the Nabatean people created an irrigation system, collecting rainwater the few times it rained within an aqueduct where they would share from until the next rainfall. But they were not just surviving, but thriving. There was a luxury pool and evidence of botanical gardens, showing that the people living in this city profited extremely from trade they received, and had enough technology to accomplish a lavish lifestyle. Petra was one of the world's first sophisticated civilizations. Being untouched for thousands of years, today it represents life in the Hellenistic period. It shows the beginning of common use of columns and the discovery of how reinforcements work in arches of tombs. A common tourist site today, with some modern-day paths made to replicate those that became unsafe. One is able to walk through the canyons and let the mountains engulf you until you reach this desert paradise. During Petra's peak, it was a trade hub, with all different cultures exposing its citizens to the spices, silk, and porcelain of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and India. Being in the center of Alexander the Great's empire, the city was an important part of trying to unite the conquered land. The outside of a building was just a relief carved out of the mountain. All of these tunnels and carvings were done without modern-day safety equipment or knowledge. This innovative architecture had lasted thousands of years without collapsing. It is important that we continue to preserve this history because it probably laid as a foundation for later mountainside reliefs that were built, such as the caves in central China carved by Buddhist monks. This form of relief was the first of its kind, and we should keep the history that we have left.